beginning
Yeah.
during food distribution.
Hi, Jen.
Every day, what,
Hey, John,
once a day for 2 hours every day?
Tyler, not.
We were pretty good
You
at
know,
that
you're sitting
assembly
in
line.
that spot, when I switch up here. You can switch your.
I saw the candy.
How are you?
That is the.
Oh, you got it too.
Personal. Name tags over here.
I just thought maybe you were just switching it up, confusing people.
Yeah, I'm not. Not going that direction.
We already had some. Yeah, somebody's treating him.
What?
So Sam Stack, Jeff, Christine, Ashley Soma.
Hey, Deb.
Hi, sorry, you know it's bad when you walk in. What's that for John? I just
Oh,
realized.
good shot.
You didn't even call that.
I said, John beat me here, darn it. The busiest guy on the council beat me.
You didn't even call for that, John. You were just.
Just minding my own business, just reviewing my
I
audit.
just always like, I just came from across the state to do this or that.
Make fun of her for us, right? Yeah, it's a board meeting, John.
She didn't hear you.
I feel like I need to do
Yeah.
that because Jeff's not here to give him trouble about stocks.
Oh,
So
No,
I'm
I'm
just
not
trying to
going
do that. Okay.
Andrew, anytime you're ready.
all right, I got another minute, so I'm not gonna be early.
Jeff's on and Christine. There's Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Tyler.
Christine's on.
Yep. All right, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the public hearing for the 2021-2022 budget hearing. Any input from the public on this? Gail, do we have any?
No, I have not received any input, verbal or written. So in this budget that is up here is the same budget we looked at the last month. So it has not changed. And so overall, it will be a levy decrease of about 88 cents. And if you remember in our financial forecasting model, we will model out that the levy will be decreasing over the next few years. Just because mainly our availability of cash reserve has been limited. So, but this budget year, basically, everything's the same other than the ability to levy for cash reserve like we have in the past, the dollar amount. But overall, the debt service is at the maximum of 405 to not prepay levy this year like we've done in the past, but because we have refunded, and which we're gonna finalize tonight. Tonight is the last of all of our transactions to move forward on that. And we used that, the 405 maximum to pay more aggressively on our schedule for our refunding.
Great. Anything else from the board or public? This is public hearing. Thanks, Gail. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn that public hearing for the budget. And I'm gonna go ahead and open up the school calendar public hearing for the 21-22 school calendar. You will see the calendar is in our notes. And Gail, pull it up there. Do we have anybody from the public or any notes from the public on this, Gail?
Nothing, again, no. And if everybody, the biggest concern was this is a full day of professional development is the biggest change on this instead of the early outs. The other thing is graduation is May 22nd. Other than that, Carrie, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that you'll see that with the group, the items that are in green are those full day of PDs. So we have gotten rid of the 12:30 dismissals. We put one in September because we didn't want to have a full day off in September. So we kept one in September. And then we have November because that's due to conferences. And then same with March, that's due to conferences, but that's it.
Start date, Tuesday, the 24th.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
2 weeks off at December.
Yep.
And it's spring break.
Anything else? Comments? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close or adjourn the public hearing for the school calendar. And we're gonna go ahead and call to order our regular board meeting for April 12th. Roll call, Gail?
Tyler,
Here.
Jeff,
Yes.
John,
Here.
Deb, here, and Andrew.
Here. You have approval of the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? All right. Agenda passed, and we have Lesia Hassel here as a parent to just talk at the public forum. Floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name is Lisa Hassel, and I am a mother of 2 children who attended Gilbert schools. I have a now 10th grader who was in Gilbert High last year. The name is Alexandra Hassel. And I have Daniel Hassel, who is 9, is now a 3rd grader, and he attended Gilbert Elementary last year. Now, my son Daniel has a health condition, which only 1 in 200,000 people have. So in the whole Iowa, it's pretty much the only boy who has it. And specifically an X-linked immunodeficiency disease that makes it so that he can be infected very, very easily. Because our whole life depends on his routine, including his infusion routine. He gets subcutaneous infusions that are 3 hours long every week. My whole life is scheduled around the exact time and day during that week for him to get the infusion. And so he's a creature of habit. He does everything on a schedule to a minute. And so last year, early in August of 2020, when I found out that the school still doesn't have a good plan, which is no wonder nobody had a plan at that time, that things are going to be worse for him, at the strong advice of the doctor and very strong caution of the doctor, we enrolled him in Iowa Connections Academy, which is this only online school, charter school here in Iowa, with a 10, with something like 10 years of teaching kids online. I also pulled my older daughter out of school to make sure that Daniel is safe. And so they're finishing up an online school year. So the plans and the advice of the doctor, we are now all clear to go back. According to the data they have, kids with his condition don't get any worse than your average kid who receives, who gets COVID-19. So I emailed school, that was March 22nd of this year, because again, just like Daniel, I'm a very organized creature of habit, just beforehand to make sure we are all clear. Now, when we left, I called the school to finalize all the details. And I was told on the phone, and I apologize, recollect at this time who that was exactly. But I was told, yes, we know about Daniel's condition, which they did. I disclosed that. You're cleared, you can come back at any time. And I'm finding out now he cannot return to school at all. And for him, it's a little tragedy. Being a person of habit, being somebody who was meeting with his Gilbert friends during this year, we did socially distant play dates. So he maintained all of those connections. He never had any problems either socially or behaviorally or academically or any curriculum related problems at school. In fact, he really thrived in school. Now he can come back. Now, part of that problem is because of me, because as a parent, I did not realize I was not sent out any follow-up information. I did not really know that taking my kid out of Gilbert, I am breaking that open enrollment. Since I first communicated to school in March, again, I think it's about 21st of March, or sometime it was at, around that date. It turns out I cannot take him back because the time is past. Now, Daniel has only known the school, except for this 1 year in the virtual school, where the virtual synchronous meetings were very, very rare, basically non-existent. And so I ended up, and his father ended up educating him, homeschooling him, which was possible, thankfully. But now I have a child in my hands who is, for whom routine is everything, and I mean everything, health-wise, because if we don't do the infusion at the right time and day, that's a danger, because that means that his chance of getting infected is really, really increased. So I have this son of mine who's very much looking forward coming back, and I can't get him back. He's a returning student. So both of my kids all together, they've been here for 13 years, if you count it all together. He's a returning student, no problems at school, excellent academically. I don't have any curriculum related problems, because I hear that that might be part of the, why, there is increased numbers of open enrollment this year. My daughter, I'm not insisting on my daughter coming back, because she is a much more flexible person. If there is no place for her in the school, I'm okay with enrolling her to Ames High. In fact, I'm already making arrangements. All I'm asking about is bringing my son back, because for his mental health and in his idea of what school is, Gilbert is it. And so I just appreciate a little bit of compassion and understanding, because I'm an educator myself who works for Iowa State University. And every single time I look at our faculty and at our students, I understand that during this unprecedented times, flexibility is everything. Now I know that flexibility is, has a consequence here when there are processes involved. But I believe that with everything I told you about, the specific case, this is very unique, very unusual, and very different, and for a person who truly, in fact, needs it. So I'm just hoping that, for a school where every student, every day matters, this might be a consideration that receives some attention from you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcia. Appreciate your time coming in tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. So I'm good to leave this thing? Is that fine?
Yep, you are. So
Thank you for your
your
attention
problem.
again.
Thank you very, very much. All right, we will go ahead and move forward to administration reports. Lindsay?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the return to learn updates, middle school testing.
Yeah, last month we talked about high school, and so this month we were talking about middle school. Middle school looks, you can go to the first one. So middle school, and this, there is one thing missing on this now that I'm looking at that. At the middle school, they did something a little bit different in the fact that they tested in September, but they also tested again in February. The one thing with the NWEA testing, we have the ability to test, I want to say it might be up to 6 times. I don't know why anybody would test that many times, but some districts test 3 times, every grade level 3 times a year to get that, to see what that growth looks like. Those are mostly bigger districts and stuff, but so I'm sorry, that is not on this, but he did. Now, if you go to the next screen, you're gonna see where you can see how that data plays out. And we talked about what this test was last month, just with the NWEA, is that adaptive test. So as kids take it, it either, it'll meet their needs. It either is gonna get a little bit harder, or it's gonna back off a little bit for those students. Now, when you look, these are the same kids, and you'll see the blue color on the graph that is when they were in 5th grade, and they took that, I think it was the winter benchmark, right before we actually, went on closure. So before we went on spring break, they took it as 5th graders. Then we didn't come back to school. So then Mike had all of his kids on site take the test in September. And which was, I felt, a great way of looking at data as to what those kids would need. And he was gonna use that for intervention, and he can speak to that in just a sec. And then you'll see, then they took it again in February. Each building, NWEA has been the consistent district-wide assessment across buildings that we've had, just because we talked about this last time. Iowa has, we went for the Iowa assessments, and then we're into ISASP, and then we've had some years off. So we wanted to stick with NWEA because at least we had a consistent measure for our kids over time. And we have that historical data on our students. One thing is, buildings have had the ability to decide when do they want to give that test. So historically, a long time ago, we were very consistent on when we gave it as a district. We've been a little bit more flexible on when buildings can give that test. And when you look at that NWEA, that RIT score, which is the average, if you look at the way they norm it, what the average student at that time of year takes it. So you'll notice, like, for the 5th grade fall score, I should look at that on mine right now because my eyes are so. If you look at that 5th grade score, the average NWEA RIT is 214. The Gilbert average in February was 227. Now you'll notice that the September norm for NWEA is like it's almost exactly the same. And the reason that is NWEA puts that into account of that summer slide, not COVID slide, summer slide. So then it goes back up. But you'll notice a lot of times we don't always see that same summer slide, but now we're talking about closure here. And yes, we had kids in school, but it was voluntary and it did look different. So we aren't used to seeing that big of a dip. We're gonna see, you might see a little dip, but not quite to that degree. But then you'll notice how our kids are coming out of that. Now, I'm sure that some of you are saying, well, when you did the high school, you pulled out those remote numbers. When we tested in September, we did not test our remote kids at the middle school. Now, in February, some of our remote kids did test, but the pool was not big enough to pull that out when you looked at those numbers. When we were in school in September, when we came back in September, I think 17% of our kids were remote. And so I want to say the middle school was around, I'm actually thinking 68 was how many kids you had remotely at the beginning of the school year. At the beginning. And then when you took it in February, that number was probably down for the whole district in the low 40s.
Yeah, I think it was less than that.
Yeah, so I mean, so when you look at that and you think about what those numbers would have been per grade level, like 7th and 8th grade is less than 10. I want to say maybe around 7 kids or something in 7th grade, and then again in 8th grade, not combined. It's smaller than 10. Anyway, so I think this shows that we are, what you're going to see, we've got math data and reading data. All of them are going to look very similar to what you see right here. Is this a great example of why we should be in school? Yeah, definitely. It is an example of that. Another thing that comes to mind as I look at this is I think when we talk about what should remote learn, should we be a school that provides remote learning? We talked a little bit about this last month, just in the fact of what about families that might want to go remote? We aren't trained. We have not trained our teachers to be remote teachers. So by looking at this, I can say, now I can't pull out the remote data, but I can say our kids, we are a school, we are an on-site school. And, we can look through all of them. You guys can take a chance to look through them, but all of your data is gonna look very similar to what you see right here. When you look at, all the graphs are almost identical to these at, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They're all right there for you to, to look at, but, I don't know that we need to take a lot of time to look at each one right now. But what questions might you have?
I have a couple of questions. Just to make sure I'm reading this right, first of all. So I feel like each month, I apologize that you kind of refresh me on this because I don't look at them that often, but so in February, like if I was reading the Gilbert average percentile in that top chart over there,
Yes, ma'am.
February 2020, a group of 5th graders took it and they got a 74.3. And that is on their 5th grade knowledge, right?
Yeah, and that's the average.
Yeah.
So,
average.
and
that's
that's,
how I'm reading it
yes,
across.
you're
Then-
right.
Then when they came down, would you have expected that number to be around
No.
74
Yeah,
on a normal
yeah,
year?
oh
Like
yeah,
to
I'm
stay
sorry, you're
up?
talking about the next one. Yes,
Okay, and so there's obviously a dip that we've lost.
yes. Yes. If you, hey Gail, would you go to the next slide? Because this 5th grade map is definitely the biggest dip, from going in September. So when you look here at the 5th grade reading, or not, I mean, the 6th grade reading, meaning the first year that they took this
It's
was in
not so
5th
much,
grade.
it's not so much of a dip.
It's not quite as bad. That map, that 5th grade map was the biggest dip.
Cool, I just
the whole
wanted to make
thing.
sure that I was understanding it right and
And when we say the percentages, I mean, like when it says what your percentages are, so that would be like if I was a kid and I was in the 99th percentile, that would mean that I'm at the very top.
Yeah, yeah.
If I'm at the 67th, or I'll say if I'm at the 60th percentile, that means I did better than,
me.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
gotcha.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And my other question, I just want to understand better about, so what we had done last month, and in fact, the reason this kind of comes to my mind is like, we've had some Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that watch our meetings remotely, and then I'm sure all of us, we get emails about them and they ask. And one of them that I got last month, or about last month, was talking about how we used this data to compare online and remote learning. But we don't have that, and I thought, I'm trying to understand, like, why did we not test remote?
So we.
I mean, so that we
yeah,
can see the
so
difference, right?
February we did. So
Of 2020, but that's before,
Of 21, so we offered,
all of the remote came in and took it?
no, so
Just
in 8th grade, I was missing 4. So I was short 4 kids, in 7th grade it was 2, and in 6th grade it was 4, but all the rest came in.
Okay.
And what we did at that time was, so in September, I didn't test any of them. The reason I gave it in September was really, that is a time where we slot kids in for interventions. And we normally would use the previous year's spring data to do that. Well, I didn't have that data. And so I thought, rather than normally our screening test would be the A reading test. Rather than give that, I wanted to give the NWA because that was the most recent data point we had the year previous. And we just did that with on-site kids because I was simply using that to screen kids for interventions. So that's why we didn't do it in the fall. In the spring, when we had emailed this out to remote parents, knowing that the ISASS was coming up, and at that time that I emailed, my understanding was there wasn't a remote option for that test. And since these parents were nervous about coming in, what I said was basically, you're gonna have to come in to take the ISASS. The NWA, if that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to, but if you want to, here's the reasons why I think it's good. And we set up some times that they could come in, and then also said, if you want to come in at an alternate time, we can. And most did, except for 4, 2, and 4. Yeah.
And they have online versions of this though, right?
They do, but
Yeah.
what I didn't want Deb was to create a point of tension with, well, I gotta take the last one online, why can't I do this one online? And yeah, at the time, ISASS didn't have an online version, and I was trying to avoid basically a fight about that. Well, I gotta do it before, why can't I do it this time? And there just wasn't that provision. And if kids don't take the ISASP, we get dinged. And so I didn't want to say, well, then I'm not coming in at all to not take that. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a question. You guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you,
Yeah.
yeah.
My question to you, Carrie, is how many other remote learning grades did we not test?
Do you mean like on this test?
Well, if we went out and did all this testing, but we didn't test the remote kids in middle school, did we not test the remote kids in the other schools too?
Like intermediate and.
No, we did.
We,
Oh, okay.
So why would we not test middle school?
and Jeff, we did, I don't know if you can hear me, but we did test middle school. There were, like I said, there were 4 parents, 4 kids in 8th grade, out of, I don't know what there were at the time, 12 maybe remote learners, something like that. There were 2 7th grade and there were 4 6th grade who opted not to come in and take it
In February,
in February.
Yeah, but my understanding, now maybe I heard this wrong, Mike, did you not test them in September?
We did not, no, and the only
And so
reason.
hang on, just so I can understand this, because I'm kind of a slow guy. If you didn't test them in September, did none of the other schools test the kids remotely?
Nobody else gave it in September. I was the only building that gave it in September. That was an optional thing that I chose to do to get good data. I don't believe any other building gave it in September because we only give it once a year, which would be mid-year.
So we didn't test anybody in September.
nobody did in the district.
The high school takes it in the fall window, but I don't think they took it in September. Every other building does it mid-year, does the mid-year window.
You did it in November,
You
right?
did,
So I appreciate the data.
Yeah.
I was just looking back at the high school and now I'm looking at this, and if you just kind of scroll through, Gail, what I've been kind of focusing on is that very first column, January 2020, so that's pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the bottom, so Gilbert students above average, and that's an absolute number, right? So 106 out of 131. Then there's 100 out of 129. So if I go pre-COVID and if I go all the way to February 2021, you know, after we've been out of school last spring, but we've had good portion of this year to get back. I look at the high school scores from last month, we basically caught up, right? So, and you broke it out for in class and virtual, but we kind of caught up. But as I've scrolled through these, and it's probably to your point, Carrie, just on, but a lot of this has been in person. I just want to understand, are we caught up yet? And it looks like our scores are still below where we were pre-COVID, as I look at it as percentage of students above average, right?
I'm not gonna disagree with you on that.
Right, I mean, is that kind of an assessment of
Well,
where
and
we're
I
at in
think
the
that
middle
one thing that
school?
we saw at the very beginning of this, when we came back in the fall, was that those high 81% above is where we lost a bigger chunk. They moved down either to the high average or to the average. Most of them actually moved to the high average. We didn't see, and you'll notice that, we didn't see the low average or the low move as much. They moved a little bit, but not as much as we saw the other ones move.
I think it's just more of an observation, and then it's also just, the question that keeps coming up, and it's not just our school, it's all, like, where our kids are at.
Yeah.
And high school, I felt kind of good looking at those numbers, and maybe I didn't look at them close enough, but it's like, well, they're actually at or above where they were the year before, right? They're sort of, and so I'm just, and again, this is not a reflection of the middle school, it's just an
No.
observation of, is that kind of what happened this year? And maybe also, Mike, it would be like, well, are there other resources or things that we need?
Yeah.
Specifically for the middle school? I mean, did it hit them harder than high schoolers? I don't know.
Mike, we know that there can be a dip in middle school, just with that age. And then I don't know if, thinking of everything that kids have been through, if that is compounded during this time or not. I mean, that's one, that can be a tiny little piece of this. But I think that this is where, and I know we talked about this when we talked about the elementary and the intermediate data. I think that this is where we have to also look and fine tune to make sure that we are, and I'm not saying, when I say this, I'm not saying that I think that that's what's happening all the time. You gotta fine tune to make sure that you're hitting those most important big rock standards. What are those essential learnings? Because that's where your target is. Not the need, not the nice to knows, but the need to knows. Those, what we call whatever you want to say, the big rocks, those parts of your learning. And I know that our teachers are working on those things. But I think when you look at data like this, that just tells us, you know, the importance of that.
But Tyler, I don't disagree with what you're saying. You know, I haven't had, to be perfectly honest, I haven't had a lot of chance to dig into the NWA data because shortly after we got it done, then we had to start planning for ISASC, which we're doing right now. So, you know, I haven't had a lot of time to dig into it, but I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Do you have a feel, so I know that the remote students didn't take this test, but, and because we're really not, like, standardized
did-
tests aren't the biggest deal,
But they
right?
did take it in February.
In February, I got
Right,
that,
right.
but I mean, like, they took it in February, but we don't, but I think what you're looking at here is January 20th, it took a big dip, it's back up, oh, okay, so the 94. I'm just saying, like, do we have other ideas that we feel like they're experiencing the same level of success in the class? Like, what is our, I guess, anecdotal experience, because we don't have the test data or whatever to say how are our remote students in middle school faring?
I
Is
think
that
a lot of
fair to me?
our, you know, a lot of our screening data, I would say wouldn't quite show a fall off that maybe this data does. So I think, you know, I don't have anything like that prepared to share with you. I certainly can get some of that put together, but I think by and large, what you would see on that data is that, you know, where they were at in the fall anyway versus where they're at now, we've made strides, we've made growth. And I think that's what I can share with you, and that's what that reflects is where they were at on our dipstick measure in the fall versus where they're at now, we're growing. But to Tyler's point, we probably haven't made up all the ground from where they were
Yeah.
the year prior.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of like, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, like
No,
it's
it's
numbers
absolutely
right here, but like, I was thinking of when like Vic and you had to come, you brought up with your high school stuff. Well, these are the number of kids that are maybe at risk or, you know, that are engaged. We're getting a sense of the engagement of our online learners. And I know there's fewer in the middle school now than there was at the beginning of the year, but that's just like, I'm just curious if it was
And this-
similar.
This doesn't really have much to do with me, but it's a little different though when you're looking at credits too. You're looking at, you know, credit acquisition, where it's a little more, especially with the remote learners, a little more cut and dry, you know,
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
What
no,
I'm saying.
I get that it's not apples to apples, but it was a good feel.
Yeah.
I think we had a good feel of it, and I'm just curious, that's it.
So, you know, at middle school, with the standards-based grading, I don't have grades that I could pull and share with you, and then our policy of, you know, reuse and retakes. So that would be hard to reflect, yeah, and I know how you feel about that.
No, I get it now, I get it now, sorry about that, yeah,
So I don't have that data, but what I can tell you, like, for kids who qualified for intervention,
yeah,
when you look at their progress monitoring data, they're closing gaps, we've had a lot of kids exit interventions. And so, you know, I think, like I said, when you look at where we were at in the fall versus where we're at now, there's definitely been a lot
You've
of,
gained ground.
yes,
Yeah.
we're making up ground, but again, not probably to where we were at last time.
Do we have any feel for other school districts? I mean, I've been waiting to see any data from Ames and I've yet to see any, at least in public, but do we have any feel for other school districts? I mean, whether they're experiencing something similar or whether, you know, again, the districts that
Not
were
other-
virtual completely, what they're seeing?
So I can give you anecdotal, just from, you know, my middle school principal network, is that everyone kind of saw something similar. I can't give you hard and fast numbers on that,
No.
but everybody this fall had seen, a little bit of a regression from the spring. And then we're scrambling to try to close up that gap, so.
The only official data like that we're gonna, because this data, nobody has to report out on.
Yeah.
Nobody's reporting out on this data. The only data that's gonna go out to the public and be compared across the board to everybody is the data that we're gonna get from the ISASP test. The other one is just if people are taking this test and if people are willing to share where they're at across on that way, because we don't share this with, except, I mean, we're sharing it in-house, but we don't share it outside of the
Yeah.
district.
Yeah.
So,
Mike, one of the things that's happened from like September to February is we've had a big decrease in those number of remote learners. And I would guess, and I know you don't have, I'm not asking for any information, but I would be willing to say that you're tracking those kids that are coming back in or looking at how they're doing as far as the ones that were remote and making sure that we're making progress on that. Now, I know you can't say, well, it's this and this and this, but I think that we're seeing that. Is that correct?
Yes, so a lot of our remote learners were, I would say the vast majority were not struggling learners. We did have some who were.
Mhm.
So those kids who are coming back, for the most part, like I said, I haven't gone back to compare how those individual kids did a year ago versus this spring. But in terms of, screening them when they return, they don't qualify for interventions, or anything like that. Now, we do have a couple of remote learners who have struggled.
Mhm.
And we have a couple who are, with a, I don't know, I don't want to give anything away, but we have a couple who maybe are still struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
That we're trying to work with them, on just concerns about being in the building, so.
And we've tried to communicate with parents too about the fact of maybe that remote situation maybe isn't right for everyone. And so I think that they, whether it's at high school with Vic or any of the principals that are here, I think that they really tried to work with those remote kids and see what we can do to help them out.
I may be putting somebody on the spot, but Christine, I'd just be curious, do you see any data in Arizona or are you seeing trends? I'd just be curious if you've got any.
Thank you, but no, you're not putting me on the spot because I'm over here like, I want to say something. Well, it's interesting. You read my mind. So we in our district take NWEA as well. And so one of the trends that we have found with our middle school students, we also found it in the elementary grades, is we did have our kids at home take NWEA at home. And what we found is kind of the opposite, was very inflated scores because we had so many parent helpers.
Change the percentages.
So we kind of had the opposite, where if they were at one score maybe a year ago, then we looked at this score, they jumped multiple points. So whether they took it or they didn't take it, I don't know that we're necessarily getting an accurate read. At least that's where we've been. And then the other piece I wanted to share is just that piece about, I think Carrie mentioned the big rock standards, or we call them power standards. It's all the same idea of what is it that they need to know and how do we get them there? And it sounds like you guys are doing that, and that makes a big difference. It just takes time. There's some great research out there about learning loss. If you look at back in the day, unfortunately, like Hurricane Katrina, where kids had significant learning loss. And when you read that research, it talks about pushing kids forward, which when you talk about intervention, it sounds like you're doing that based on where they are and moving them forward. So that's what we've been doing in Tempe. We're seeing some good results. And we still have, same thing, kids at home and kids here or in school. And we're all working on the same thing. So everybody's doing a great job. So thanks for asking, and I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, Christine.
Can I just chime in real quick?
Yeah.
So there were some other principals that shared similar feelings about remote testing being done at home. And the reason that I didn't want them to, two reasons I didn't want to take the NWA at home. One of them was because I knew that ISASP was coming. And then second off, if I got data that showed a huge increase, would I trust that data? Honestly, I wouldn't. So what's the point of collecting it? It really was to that point. And there were principals who echoed something similar to what Christine just said about all of a sudden now, we've got scores that were higher and then there's doubt on, even if it's marginally increased, do I trust that data or not? I'm probably still going to screen that kid. And so that's why I tried to get them in-house. as much as I could.
I think that makes sense, and part of my question, I'll be honest, and I don't mean to take us down a rabbit hole, we could, part
We're
of my
down there,
question
it's
was.
all
What did you say?
We're right
Help
now.
us get out of the rabbit hole. Help us get out.
The reason I asked is because to me, this is something that I would expect to have been maybe something that was similar across the district.
Statewide.
And so that we can match up, right? I understand there's details behind this I'm not aware of. So I appreciate the conversation. But I was confused and I didn't understand it. But
Yeah, and
I
this September
appreciate it.
maybe muddied the water,
yeah,
when you see that, because I just wanted to get as accurate a picture of the kids coming in as I could. And since they took it in February before the shutdown, to me, that made the most sense. I could have given the A reading test or another screener. But to me, it just made the most sense to give that, and maybe it muddied the water when you see that in there. But, and because I was using it for interventions, I only needed the in-house kids
yeah.
to get that.
And I think that was the part too, that I think I incorrectly read into that if there were, or maybe I didn't, but like, I was assuming that we were also doing interventions and those kinds of things for remote learners, so.
We
I
are,
was, you know what I mean, like, cause that's what we've advocated for, how can we make this remote experience as similar, not everybody has a choice to be remote, and so we owe them to do the best we can. I think
we are not delivering interventions for remote learners and have not been, and that comes down to logistics and resources, and I'm just not able to provide it remotely, so.
And if anything, I feel like it was smart to do it in September. You got a little bit of data to see how big that gap was after several months. And then had an opportunity to get those kids in intervention and work with them.
Yeah.
We considered doing it, and then we had a death of a student in September and felt like our student body was not in a good position to be, doing some of those things at the time. Ended up being higher priorities on the mental health side at the time. So, hats off to Mike for doing that, to try to get a good dipstick at the beginning of the year.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it.
I would echo, because I said that to Lindsay multiple times in the last couple of weeks. On the other side, as we move forward, I mean, it is another way to look at data that, do we need to look at doing that across the board earlier so that we've got, I don't know, that's another conversation, but I do think it gave the middle school some data moving forward because didn't have those kids for 4 or 5 months.
It makes sense. As I was going through, this is all based off of state averages and percentiles. So you're comparing against people that are in the same boat we are. So you think, well, why we kept dipping down, especially on the high achievers? Well, again, it just all clicked when some of the remote people in some of these schools, again, mom and dad are sitting over their shoulder helping them. Well, that's going to hit the high achievers first. And if you go back to when I went through all these, I'm thinking, oh God, well, we're going to hit the worst is the high end. Well, doesn't make sense because it should mean, but now it does, because you're going to have some of those that were low before. And the parents are going to help them to get to that high end. And for some of the other schools, I'm saying outside of Gilbert.
I was just saying,
Since
we
we
took
tested.
all of ours in-house.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. But some of these, if they're taking them at home, it's
Yeah.
gonna skew some of those higher achievers. It's because now they're bumped down.
The funniest part is I really am the one in the room that really likes these tests the least, so I apologize.
Well, thanks.
Take your time, but I
Well, I'm
appreciate,
good.
I appreciate the background. I appreciate
Take us home.
Mike, Carrie, thank you.
We're done.
Appreciate it.
So, sorry.
Yep, I think we're done now with all this
Yeah, we're done.
NWEA testing. So we're looking for, what's the next one? ISC, whatever. No. All right, CDC guidelines update.
All right, Ashley, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about CDC, some of the updates we talked about at our administrative meeting, and then we'll maybe open it up for some questions.
You bet. So a week ago today, on April 5th, the CDC sent out some guidelines for updating cleaning facilities, and they have pulled back some of their recommendations. We've been operating under their guidelines from the start, and that was with the cleaning every 2 hours. They're now finding that the transmission rates are lowered when people are masked, and the cleaning doesn't need to be done quite that much. So in looking at that and kind of peeling back our mitigation in the same way with these guidelines, we are proposing to go from every 2 hours, like we have been doing with our disinfecting, to 2 to 3 times a day. So it'd be kind of a mid-morning, maybe mid-afternoon, and then either after school or before school, and reevaluating what are those highly touched surfaces that we have in our buildings that need to be disinfected that way.
Ashley, what about the, because we talked about this today on the phone too. The situation, we have teachers in each of the classrooms that are kind of hitting the in between classes and things like that. You want to just mention a little bit about that, what we talked about and kind of what we're going to do as far as maybe looking at evaluating that down the road?
You bet. So we chose to continue to, as you read the guidelines, first of all, and everything is there's the guidelines, and then that's kind of loose in the middle there of exactly what does that mean. So we have the guidelines stating that some things could be cleaned, once per day if people wear masks, but if you have young children in there, or if someone had COVID, or, if it's highly touched and things like that. So we're trying to take all those little pieces and hit our big picture with the system here, based on our system that we feel like has been working pretty well. So our classroom procedures, we would leave the same as we have right now. What our teachers have been doing in classrooms, or, in between periods at the high school and middle school, those kind of things, we would leave that as is. But, if locker handles are getting sprayed, we probably would maybe pull back on that, because likely only the kid whose locker it is the one touching it. So we don't need to do that. And going from every 2 hours down to 2 to 3 times a day, that would take it from 4 to 5 times a day, roughly, depending on what activities and things happen in buildings, to those 2 to 3. We also looked into kind of where we're at. Dan and I met on Friday and looked at where we were with supply. Right now, if we make this change, we have enough BioEsk to fulfill that. And then classroom wise, we have a flyer ready to go to be pushed out on social media for one more donations from parents looking at for Clorox wipes. Now we can walk into any store pretty much and find them, the microban spray, the Lysol, and things like that to use in classrooms in between.
Questions about the CDC? Things are changing. I know when I met with Andrew and Deb, we talked about, we just want to make sure that people understand that we're watching that. We're trying to keep things going. We're still doing the mask. I want everyone to realize that. And I know as principals, you guys are working on that to make sure that everyone's wearing those and wearing those properly. We're trying to do the social distancing, but we're going to cut back a little bit on that every 2 hours type of cleaning. So do you have any questions for anything there?
No, I think it sounds great. The CDC guidelines came out. We're still going by those guidelines. That was one of our kind of go-tos for updates. It'll free up some time, I think, for staff members to focus on education and everything else. That's a big, big plus. No, I think I'm all for it personally. I have no issues with it. And I think it's great. So thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
Thanks,
Great
Ashley.
job.
One thing before we leave the basically administrative reports, one of the things that we did, and I'm looking over at Vic because it'll affect him, is the fact that we have graduation set up. Is it the 23rd, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one of the things that we do is we've added those snow days onto the end. I would hope that the board would not request that those seniors come back and make up those snow days after graduation. Now you can talk to Vic about that.
That's the job.
Good luck with it. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. We added them on to the end, and that they will be graduating. Mr. Vanderpool will make sure that they have all their academic things completed in proper fashion. So just want to make sure that you knew it.
Every senior's dream of snow day, right?
Yeah.
Since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Anything else as far as administrative reports?
You want me to say anything about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You want me to say anything about prom or?
Yeah.
We had prom this weekend. It went great. Everything was awesome. Did my heart good to see smiling faces at Grand March and hear laughing and see kids just enjoying themselves. It's the first time we'd had a dance in over a year. We were able to do some social distancing with the way we set up the dance floor and had masks on at all events, and it just went great. Andrew was there, helping as parents, and got to see it firsthand. And it was awesome. It was the first taste of normal we've had in a while, so. First real event we've had other than sporting events. So it was awesome. Wonderful.
Give me a feel for like how many people showed up, because obviously like there more people showed up for after prom, right? But like,
Yeah,
did you have a good turnout or
yeah, I mean,
It's
it's hard
voluntary,
to
of
tell.
course,
I mean, I don't count dance numbers normally. But we had 214 kids, sign up to go to the
Yeah.
dance. I think all of them showed up at 2, so I thought that was pretty good. Remember, it's a junior and senior event.
Yeah.
So not
So it's just
every
some.
junior and senior is going to go. But after prom was very well attended. I'd say probably 75% of all grades, if not more. So I thought it was great. We had, lots of cleaning and sanitizing between things, and it was good. It was nice to get that over with and then start planning for graduation.
Speaking of, what does that kind of look like, do you think, for graduation?
Well, I mean, right now, obviously, that's gonna be based on, what's going on at the time. Plan is to have it indoors as normal. And then if things are really bad, obviously, I would need to consult with Mr. Beecher, school board on, metrics in the county and things. And obviously, it's gonna be based on rates in the school also. Right now, we're going through a nice stretch with low infection rates and things. But I feel very confident to be able to have an indoor ceremony as we normally would. We have talked about thinking about trying something at the football stadium because we've never had an outdoor graduation besides last year. But that is just so weather based. And even on good days, it's a hurricane on the football stadium. It's windy out there all the time.
Today's a good reminder, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, wind block anywhere. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, in worst case scenario, if we had to limit attendance, we would, maybe have to look at that. But right now, the gym holds a pretty good chunk of people, and I think we could be able to have a regular graduation. And then add in things like we use, like the parade. Kids really like that last year.
Oh, yeah. That was a
Looking at things
huge-
like that and looking at, how to do a few other things that are special for the seniors. So
Good,
that's my thoughts just off the top of my head.
Cool.
thank you.
So Andrew and I go down as the only 2 people to speak at a drive-in.
Drive-through graduation.
I hope that's true that it goes.
By the way,
back.
I need to know who's gonna be the 2 speakers for graduation again, so we gotta print the programs here very soon.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. I'll let you know on that. So Deb wants to speak.
No, I know.
Vic, I wasn't trying to leave you out. I'm used to looking at you up here. So,
Yeah.
anyone else for administrative reports?
And real quick, I just want to, echo Vic's comments on prom. Again, it was great. The students had a great time. Great to see some bit of normalcy, but it was really cool to see the community be able to come back and help too. I mean, there was volunteers. We had a ton of parents volunteer, a ton of staff volunteer. We had the community just really donated a ton of food and items and everything else. And it was kind of neat to kind of get that community feel kind of back. We really haven't had it for a while. So, and it was, yeah, so I mean, the community just tip of the cap to everybody because it was, normal after prom and normal prom's a lot of work. This year was a lot more work for a little bit, even less of it. I mean, let's be honest, after prom, I had to look different. It just had to, as much as it tried not to, but it just, certain things were different. But they did a great job. So thank you very much, Vic, for everything you
And we
did.
couldn't have done without parents' support and support of the board, so thank you.
Announcement celebrations.
Anyone?
We just had one, so.
Yeah.
Vic, do you have anything else there?
I have none.
Start with you. How about any other administrators? Announcements, celebrations? Don't everyone jump in at once here.
Stacy's no, Amy, Nancy.
Okay.
Good. All right, board reports. Employee recognition Thursday, June 3rd.
Right. Just wanted to put that on your radar. We will. I gotta make sure that I check with the ladies in here about the time frame. I think that we're looking at, is it about 12:45 or 1 o'clock for the
It'll
meal?
be more like 1 by the time everybody's out and has time to get out of their building. We're gonna go back to what we've done in the past where we all get together because we're almost, we have such a small handful of people that weren't vaccinated. And we would like to be able to celebrate, that we got together. So we're gonna do some kind of box lunch. We're looking into that right now, what that will be. And then we'll do the service recognition things like we've done in the past as well. So I think that means somebody, you know, if we want to do this, somebody says something, you know, but
Usually we have two people that from the board that say, or they're handing out the little trinkets and things like that.
Deb will do that again.
Deb will do that again. Deb's gonna hit them
I'll
all.
do that for all the graduation.
But just be thinking about it.
we
No
will
problem.
also have our, after that, then, we will have our retiree recognition that the community can come in, and we can, you know, have face masks, we'll be just like, because we'll be in the buildings, we'll be in the building, but we'll do that same thing so that we can honor those people as well, for the time that they put in.
I think that's all we have for that one.
Awesome, thank you. Refunding analysis for the 2011 GO bonds. Travis, I believe we sent an email here recently, which I think Gail just
Yeah.
brought it up.
So late this afternoon, I sent an email with Travis's latest, I don't know, he puts more thought into it, and he said it's probably overburdening you guys, but I think long story short, and John, you might want to chime in here, I think it's probably most advantageous for the district just to wait until the bonds are callable. Is that your take on?
Well, he did a nice job of laying the break even. And so I think when you just kind of look at it, it's something that I never do, and that's prognosticate on what interest rates are going to do. Because tell you what, if I could do that, I would not be working. I would be doing something else. And so really kind of the bet, as I thought about, you know, preparing for this meeting, knowing that question would be coming my way, would just be that idea of really what you're saying is kind of like when you refinance your house is the best example. Is you're always thinking that once you have something that's in the money, you're always like, I need to do it tomorrow. You know, because you're in the money. And so it's one of those things. We know the worst case scenario would be, you know, rates move up and we have what we have. The other thought is you can lock in 212 now and that is what you have. Obviously, it looks a lot better a year out if we're able, if rates don't move in that direction. And remind me what the break even is.
It's like one, if it goes up 1.27, then it's a break even. So we kind of have that as an over under, right?
Yeah.
If rates stay the same or don't go up more than 1.27, we're much better off waiting.
And what I would say, normally, I would be like, wait, because 1.27 would be a big move. What gets me at least saying that we need to have this discussion is when we look at FDIC insured deposits as of the end of December 31st, 2019, they were 15 trillion. You fast forward to December 31st, or I'm sorry, 19 to December 31st, 19, December 31st, 20, it's 20 trillion. So they've added $5 trillion to FDIC insured deposits. So these aren't fuzzy numbers. These are FDIC banks and in call reports so the money supply has grown 33% that is in our banks. And so what I'm seeing is that inflation with regard to building materials, with regard to energy, with regard to commodities, with regard to ag farmland, I mean, it's really moving. And so that would be the only temperance scale. Otherwise, I'd be like, if we're in, 2-3 years ago and they're not messing around with the money supply like that, I'd be like, yeah, let's wait. But I do believe we always kind of think everything moves like history is how we like to think. But when we see that kind of change in the money supply, all bets are off. I just don't know. And so I wanted to just throw that out there that, we get a year from now and rates are up 5% and we're like, what were you doing?
Yeah. Jeff brought this up. Jeff,
Well,
to see this?
Yeah, I did read it, and it's a lot of stuff I didn't understand. But John, what's the chances that these guys that are in office are going to waive that penalty on this refinance?
Well, they're talking about tax law changes as well, which could have that in there that does away with that penalty for refinancing against bank qualified debt. And so that certainly is a possibility, and there'd be a lot of pressure on them to do that. And the nice part about this decision is we can make it at any time. And so this
If
isn't.
it starts moving, we could go, well, maybe we should do
Right,
what we can.
right. And so.
But what kind of time frame are you talking? What bill would that be in, John? Would that be in one of these relief bills that they're rounding about, or?
It would, I think it would be a big one on its own with regard to tax reform and what they're talking about, raising up the corporate tax rate and bumping the top corporate personal tax rate as well. And I think there'd be a real shot that would be in there, Jeff. So, and that would create a little less problem for us, because then we would save more money because we'd be able to bid it as a bank qualified rate, which is, pretty significant savings when you look at the bank qualified versus the taxable rate that's on there. So maybe you're hitting on the answer, Jeff, is to sit and wait and see if that tax bill comes through, and maybe Gail, if you just want to, table this for a couple of months and
Okay, that's what I was
talk
wondering,
about,
like 3 months, 6
we
months, what?
know, and it's kind of one of those things that we all kind of know that it's going to be a pretty fluid situation, and there's no guarantees, but I think the inflation thing is real. But
Okay, why don't I just in my calendar mark like on a quarterly, the next
Sure.
quarter, we'll
Yeah.
see where we're at.
We can advise Travis too, to kind of get Gilbert, he's keeping an eye on that
Yeah,
stuff pretty
He's
closely.
really good at reminding us.
And to get a sense of it, I can, keep a pretty close eye on that 10-year treasury, and it's yielding, I don't know, probably 165, something like that. And it kind of 175 was kind of the high water mark. So keeping an eye on those treasury rates, you can get a real sense of what the bond market's going to do, because they're pricing off of those treasury yields.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Anything else? Discussion on that?
Are you good, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I'm good with that. I think he's right. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but I think if they pass that bill, then I want to moving on it, because I'm pretty close to saying we ought to do it now, because I see inflation coming. I really do. I just, like John said, the cost in materials and everything is going sky high right now, and they've got to slow it down. So I think they're going to increase rates, but John's a lot smarter about that stuff. But I think let's watch that bill. If we get that bill passed, let's roll with it, because that opens up a whole nother avenue of a bunch of savings for the school district.
Thanks. All right, next item, American Rescue Plan Act offers path to optional extension for FFCRA. No idea what I just said.
These were the things that were scheduled to
Okay,
expire.
yeah, so March
Right.
31st,
That sounds
we
easier than
extended
what I
that to
said.
March 31st on the COVID leave. And that was in the first bill, which was the emergency paid sick leave request, the FFCRA. And now it has a new word, it's ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. And so what they have as of April 1st, there's, this is all optional for right now. And what I'm talking about now is all optional. The paid sick leave for COVID, we knew it as COVID leave that expired March 31st, that we extended from December 31st to March 31st. Now there's a new bucket. All employees have the option to have 80 more hours, starting all over, but that is optional. So you have a choice. And then in there, they're adding more on, they're adding some vaccine things to the qualifying event. What's not optional is there's some COBRA health insurance things that we have to abide by, and everybody has to abide these. So I'm sure if you're in the HR department, you are aware of these, but between April 1st and September 31st, if any employee loses their job involuntarily, then the employer needs to pay for the COBRA premium. voluntary and involuntary salary or voluntary and involuntary hour reductions also qualify for the employer to pay for COBRA premiums. So just some things in this that are in there, but there is an option. We don't have to, it's not mandatory, but we're bringing it up because we have talked about it in the past. It expired March 31st. We really have not seen, our numbers are just null. I mean, there's no, people are, we only have a few, months in session. So we're bringing it up to the board, just information and say these are available.
Well, and I'm not sure if we've talked about this, but if you've been vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine them. If you've been exposed, I should say.
Oh, you don't?
No,
Okay.
and we are following the CDC guidelines on that. So if you are exposed, now, there could be some gray area if your child was exposed, but you have to stay home with them or something like that. That's a different thing. But if you have been fully vaccinated after 2 weeks after your your second vaccination, you're good to go then at that point.
And again, this is the 2 weeks of additional.
Yeah,
sick
we
leave.
went ahead and extended it
Till
just because there
April.
wasn't a downside to it and that you get reimbursed, for offering it. I don't know if you've seen any downside to it, Gail.
I just don't see why, I mean,
If we're not, don't need
Yeah.
it, if there isn't a use for it,
we're only talking about 2 months, because once summer hits, I mean, really, it's,
Right.
and then obviously we still have some on staff, but they can remotely not work
So
in the
it's-
summer.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, it's an option, so.
Do we have to do anything? Now, I wasn't aware of the COBRA piece of it. Is there anything that we would have to do? Is that's just, it's a law, so law
We have to
overrides
abide
any
by it. Yeah,
policy,
there is-
so we don't have
that's
to have a
mandatory.
policy for that. Okay,
No, that's
so if
mandatory.
it expired, that we're still in compliance with that.
Now, I'm not saying that, like ISB may come out with something.
Yeah, right.
But it's mandatory, so, we have to make sure we just practice it, that we send out the notices, the COVID notices.
Yeah.
If a situation happens.
Yeah, again, I don't think we need to extend it, is my personal opinion, just because I think we've got 60 days here left. We've got everybody who wants to be vaccinated has been vaccinated within our district. Again, I just think we kind of let this kind of go back to kind of things normal and just not extend this any farther, is my opinion.
And this is not up for like action, right? It's just an FYI. It's just in the board reports.
The board report.
Gotcha.
Because that's it, right now, it's expired.
It
Expired
is.
4/1.
I don't feel strongly about it. So.
And any other discussions on it? Jeff, do you have any thoughts on it? She's awake.
There it is.
He's muted.
No, I'm fine with what was said. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead. Old business. We got the second reading here, some wonderful 400 series policies that Deb is going to walk us through right now.
Yeah, and what a great day to not bring my glasses, but I do have this pretty big, so I think we're good. So you're right, these are all policies that, this is the second reading for them, and the summary is right here. These we actually went through each one of them and recommended, and there's a few notable changes, but I would recommend that we would have approved and then waive third reading. That's our recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, second reading is approved and the third reading is waived. Next, we have the approval of the 21-22 certified budget, as Gail mentioned before. Do we have an approval on that?
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, budget and levy property taxes for the fiscal year have been approved. Next is approval of the 21-22 school calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passed. Construction update. I think we have Adam and Sam, I believe, is on as well.
Yep, good evening, everyone. I think Adam's there. I think he's getting stuck here.
Sam, you're pretty quiet.
Oh, all right, one moment.
I'm here.
Oh, there's Adam. We got Adam.
Sorry,
Is that better for my volume?
Yep, you're good.
good, yeah, good.
Great.
sorry. I had a request from my son to do something real quick, so I stepped out. So let's see, item number 1, really no action. Item number 2 is a change order to construct. Which overall, if we include changes from JAS, it's a plus and a minus, so it comes out of JAS next month when we close out their contract. Item 3 is final payment and acceptance of the work for construct, bid package 021. And then item number 4 is I'll say the overseeding of the areas by JM Landscape. The one thing I do want to point out, the 20,402 is their proposed plan, and it would not directly be an apples to apples comparison to the Iowa Athletic, I'll say, deduction. So there is a little more work included in this proposal from my review. For them to do a second application of fertilizer at this point.
What is the reduction? What was that number again?
So originally I had estimated it to be around 23. I think we're currently holding 30 or 32.
Yeah.
And we're waiting for the final number from them to come in so we can close out their contract.
Okay.
Hey, Adam, just a point of clarification. We've been talking back and forth between JM and Iowa Athletic. And we want to make sure that this field is playable, both fields are playable in the spring. So by talking to Jason, this is his proposal to get those fields, and you can take a look at the top one that he has is the fields. The second one is the disturbed areas that we have because of construction. And they're ready to go tomorrow if we can get something going here. If not tomorrow, maybe the next day. But the point is, we've been talking back and forth, and Sam, you can jump in here too, we've talked to legal to see where we're at with this. We've talked to J&M, and we would like to get going if we could with JM as far as this overall prospect. Is that right, Adam?
Yes, my recommendation would be to move forward. There is a sheet of paper that Allers recommended we complete and fill out with some dates on it to send to Iowa Athletics since we don't have their credit as of now. And that just explains that somebody else is going to be doing some work, and this is the date that they're going to be doing it.
And that doesn't jeopardize the credit. What we talked before, I think you said, well, we can't move because.
Sam, are you there?
I am. Yeah, I can weigh in on that. Great
You talked to
question.
Danielle, right?
I did. Yeah. And no, it would not jeopardize the credit. I mean, there's let me take a step back. Danielle with Allers mentioned that there's no legal problem in letting J&M get started. And Danielle did mention though that if Iowa Athletic, noticed something different, for instance, that they didn't quite agree with what J&M did, or if they didn't like it, or if they might ill affect the credit. Adam, you might be able to weigh in on that a little bit more in terms of where they're at, on what opinion they've given you, at least verbally. But there's no legal risk in letting J&M go. The only risk would be that credit amount. And I can't recall, I think that the district still is holding, I think it's close to $70,000. Is that correct, Adam?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Hey, Andrew, let's do this. Let's pull this contract with this land or the grass out. Let's approve the other ones for them, and then let's do this one separate, and I'll make the motion on this.
Whoa, hey, where'd that come from? All right, so you go, well, don't you want to start this ASAP though, Jeff?
Right.
Yeah, but I want to do it different. I want,
He doesn't
I'll-
want it 1, 2, 3.
yeah, I would
Oh, I
pull
see.
the grass one out.
Oh, yeah, that is, yeah.
Number 4 he wants out.
He wants
so
to discuss it on its
combine
own.
So they're all
Well, let's,
separate.
They're all
let's-
They're all
separate.
separate,
anyway.
yeah, they're all separate motions now, so it's separate now, is that what you're saying, Jeff?
well, I didn't know because we didn't okay any of them. Usually we do them all at once.
Yeah, well, this one is separate. The JM Lawn and Landscape is its own separate approval right now.
Okay, so, okay, then I'll ask the questions. Have we terminated the contract with the Fort Dodge Group? The people that started the turf thing?
Iowa Athletics.
Not
Have we
yet, no. The credit that they give us will create a change order, we'll deduct the money, and then the contract will be closed.
So so Sam, you said we were gonna have, here's what I would recommend. We fire the guys in Fort Dodge. And then we immediately turn around, sign the contracts for these other people and get them started on these turf, because we talked about this in February when there was snow on the ground and it was no big deal. Guess what? Grass is growing and it's a big deal now. Okay, so I would recommend to the board, and I'd make the motion to terminate our contract with the other ones, get the credit or however you want, and hire the other people right away. Because when, at the end of the day, if the difference is $2,000 or $3,000 and we're talking to attorneys, we're gonna burn through that like this. So I say we just terminate the contract, sign the new one, do the best we can at the subrogation between the two companies, and learn our lesson. Don't hire Fort Dodge again.
So that's essentially that. I might weigh in here. That's essentially what the Danielle is recommending, as well as our team as well. We don't call it firing as per the contractual language, but it's essentially releasing them from the rest of their work. And so we recommend to get going with J&M, let this company go, and then we can sort out the final dollars later on. That's the quickest way.
So
Sam-
Jeff, let me just make a motion to approve athletic field restoration proposal from JM Lawn and Landscape for $20,402.38. Do you second that?
I second that.
And they can just, well, further discussion, they can start.
Tomorrow, the next day.
Okay, everybody okay with that? All right.
The
any
one
further
thing I'd
discussion?
add to it is just video the whole deal before they started, so that this was the condition of the field before they started. If there's
Yeah, and I would agree with John on
if there's
that.
any issues there, then it's like, well, we can go back to the film. This is what it looked like when we started.
And if you remember, John, too, we've had those engineers or somebody, remember, we've had those people go out there and survey it, they had reports and percentiles of this and that, so I think we've
Right.
had some reports out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's plenty of data and documentation to say, hey, this is where we're at. This is what you provided. No, you didn't provide that, and so your credit should be X. And that we've already proposed a credit amount. It's just a matter of getting Iowa Athletic to agree or to arrive at something close to that. And I think you're right, Jeff. The difference isn't going to be much, if at all, from what we've proposed to what they're going to offer.
The bigger issue at this point is every day we wait, we lower the chance for success, which is why we're doing this in the first place. So
Right.
let's just
Yeah.
move forward.
And my only point is the picture's worth 1,000 words.
Sure.
No, I agree with that, John, but my
Yeah.
God, man,
Yeah.
all we're doing is growing some seed here. Let's go. We're growing grass. This is Iowa.
No, you're exactly right.
All right, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we're gonna go hire JM Lawn and Landscape to begin tomorrow and plant some seed, is all what Jeff said. And then, all right, we're gonna head back now on the change orders. Consider approval for the change orders for Construct for the amount of $4,535.67.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that is approved. Next is consider final payment for Construct for $34,918.66.
So moved.
Number 3,
Second.
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, payment approved.
Andrew, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Adam, are you gonna call, Jason, or do you want me to call him?
I can call Jason tomorrow and let him know.
He said. Can you repeat that, please?
I can call Jason tomorrow and let him know.
Thank you, sir.
Tomorrow
Thanks.
morning.
Thanks, Adam.
Yes.
Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
All right, now consider approval for the fiscal year 2020 district audit, which you all should have sitting on your table. Jeff, it's also in the packet.
Good reading.
Well, if you guys thought watching grass grow was boring, listen to an accountant talk about an audit. I'm just kidding. Page 5, I highlight, you got a clean opinion, so congrats to everyone that makes that opinion happen. That's always good to have everything working like we want it to work. So that is good news that there's no issues with regards to our financial statement that Gail puts together for us. Take you to page 34. There's a summary of long-term debt. I think I do this every year to kind of walk you guys through. This is where we were at the end of June of 20. So you can kind of see that table there. If you look at the very top, footnote number 7, and you look at the balance at the end of the year, we had 28 million in GO bonds, 7.5 million in revenue bonds, and then there's that pension liability that I'm always talking about. So that's looking like 7 million at the end of June of 2020. Then I take you over to page 59. And always like level and trend is always interesting. So it's kind of a neat, page there where they give you 10 years worth of information. It always seems like government financials are made as complicated as you can make them. And so when I find a supplemental schedule that is clear and easy to read, I thought that was good information. And then lastly, on page 62, there's the findings, and I didn't see anything in there that I would say warrants board attention, but Gail, if you want to make any comments on any of those items, but otherwise, it's a very good report. I move that we accept the report.
Neil, you have any comments on it?
No. The comments we've already addressed, we've responded back and they accepted them, and they're pretty much comments we had every year. I will go ahead and talk about later on in nutrition. We had our auditor in our nutrition department, the Department of Education and Nutrition end of it, because we get federal funds, they feel like our negative balances are a little too high. And I keep telling them every year we are following board policy, and we plan to follow board policy unless the board policy changes. So the only thing I can see is we follow board policy, and they feel like maybe we could do more to collect negative balances. And the only other option is small claims. And I know at one time the board is not interested in that. That's not part of our board policy. So I will continue to tell them we are following board policies until the board changes the policies. So I have included that letter in the back of the financials, so you can see it. I mean, $5,000 versus, in the perfect world, we would have no negative balances, right?
Yep.
But we just do, and that just happens. So we do our best. We follow board policies that you guys put in place. So that's what we follow.
I don't think the timing would be real good. I don't know that it's a good idea absent the timing, so I think we stay with what we got.
I think it's just important that you're able to say you follow board policy, right? I mean, I understand we still can put it out, but I know that takes it off of, right? Gail's doing what we've asked her to do, but it makes it easier, so.
That's all I was gonna mention.
Are we going to I know we've had some, looking at personnel and stuff like that, there's some changes in our district office, things like that. Are we gonna consider this? I know we've always had this segregation of duties thing, and maybe John, and maybe this is something they do in all audits, but I think, are we gonna look to plans to maybe when we kind of rebuild this district office or restaff it, I'm sorry, not rebuild it, are we gonna consider possibly
We try,
addressing that more?
we address segregation of duties as often as we can.
Okay.
From what I understand, to actually get away from segregation of duties, we just don't have enough manpower, and
It would
we're
take
just
more.
not big enough.
Yeah, gotcha.
So to say that we can totally get away from segregation of duties, I don't think that's possible. But I'm not saying that we address it whenever we can. Now, are we in a segregation of duties when we are short-staffed? No, I mean, we accommodate to get the job done.
Yeah.
But as we add our staff back and change, we continuously look at segregation of duties all the time.
I just
Whenever we
wondered,
can.
yeah, I just wondered if it was a
Possible.
chance to
Yeah.
formalize, is that what it is, formalize it? Let's rethink that and say, what can we put in place to better it?
Right.
Maybe to your point, it'll never go away, but
Yeah, we just don't have enough personnel to totally get, to not have that comment.
yeah,
But we address it, and it's
Okay.
not that it's not important, but we do the best we can with the staff we have.
We
I'll
had
second John's motion.
Johnson, any further discussion? I'll just say, Gail, great job. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
good when we read through this audit.
Well, there's
That-
multiple people that are in
Yeah,
it,
well,
so.
you and your team and everybody involved, this was a great audit. I thought I went through it as well this afternoon, so thank you.
And what was that second?
I
Tyler.
thought Tyler.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right, next item on the list is consider approval for resolution appointing UNB Bank as paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent, approving the paying agent. I'm not gonna read the rest of it. You guys can read
So
it.
moved.
Second,
Second, all right, need a roll call vote here.
Tyler?
here, yes.
Jeff?
Yep.
John?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes,
And Andrew?
Yes.
Okay.
Next item, consider approval for tax exemption certificate for refunding bonds series 2021.
so moved.
Second.
All right, further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote again.
Tyler?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yep.
John?
Here.
Deb?
Yes,
And Andrew?
Yep. Next item, 13.05, consider approval of continuing disclosure certificate for refunding bonds series 2021.
So moved.
second.
Further discussion? All right, Gail?
Tyler?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes,
And Andrew?
Yes. Last bond item here is consider approval resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation school refunding bonds, series 2021, the amount of 4.425 million and levying a tax for the payment thereof.
So moved.
Further discussion? All right, Gail?
Tyler?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Deb?
yes.
And Andrew?
Yes.
We are done.
All right, done with the bonding there. I'm back to normal a little bit. Next
I have
item,
to deliver to the both counties tomorrow. That will be done.
consider approved resolution enacting the Iowa statewide mutual aid compact, IMAC, and delegating authority to enter into agreements pursuant to IMAC.
She has it up on the screen there if you want to take a look at it.
Is this new or is this something?
Is this where we're gonna share supply?
This is when you can share things,
Yeah.
yes.
If we want, like,
Keith Morgan was instrumental in helping bring this to the Story County Superintendent's anyway.
And what are you looking to share?
Well, like if something would happen and we would need to borrow some buses or something because there's been something happening here.
Disaster kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Building, use of facilities, yeah.
So moved. Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Right, motion passed. And now we got a lot of readings again, Deb.
okay, just one
Give us a
second.
quick update here. Put your
Yeah.
glasses on or zoom in or whatever you need to do.
I'm gonna zoom in. This was the notes were a zinger this time, that's all I'm saying. So let me make sure I've got this right one up. Okay, I'm gonna do this.
Deb, what do you want? Your notes?
Just the notes, please.
Okay, these,
I
are you
think
consider these the notes, or do you
No,
want
I'm sorry, the chart.
the summary?
Yes,
Okay.
summary. Just to remember the details. So as I mentioned before, we're taking a real concerted effort to just look at all of the policies that are scheduled to be reviewed for the 5-year time period. And Gail and the district staff have done an awesome job of really just pumping through and providing these side by sides. What we focused on last time was just going through those that have noted there's zero change or possibly just a minor difference. Maybe we include a person's name, fill in that we have to complete. And the purpose here is to just I'm calling some of the noise out of the way. Obviously, we want to look at policies and have meaningful discussion. But when we're doing it just to refresh and there's no change, we don't want to spend too much time. So you'll see throughout this, we've listed them on separate agenda items. This is a list of the remaining 400 series that need to be reviewed that have no notable differences. So we would recommend I guess it's no recommendation. This is just the first reading.
Yep.
Move on to the second. And Gail, they've also done a great job of the side-by-sides are there. So if you have questions, you can refer. Can I move on just to the next agenda item, right? Because these are all just.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, they're just notices or whatever. So the next piece here is some cleanup. These policies listed under, I think is that C3B. We did a rewrite of policy 409.2. That's our employee leave of absence. We used to separate all of these out, a different policy for each type of absence. And you'll remember maybe last year we consolidated and did that. These didn't get deleted. So we have them covered in another policy. These should be removed so they're no longer redundant policies. So I guess that I would say for a delete, we probably have to have a first reading, or is that just to clean up? I'm not sure about that.
We have to allow the first reading in case there's somebody that says, no, we want.
Okay,
So
same thing.
So we have to have the second, or at least the second reading.
Yep.
Somebody doesn't agree with it.
Yeah, and then again, we did the same thing. Now, the kicker here was the reason that these are kind of split out is just by series. So this list, the 700 series, again, no notable differences.
Nice.
ISB was really nice because they kind of threw some last minute changes in, so didn't get through all of the 700s, but we got through a lot.
Nice job.
Yeah, and then the 100s and 900s. So same thing, first reading, no notable differences. I have a spreadsheet because that's the kind of nerd I am, I guess, but we have, I think, in the 200s, 250 or so or less policies that we have to do this year. By completing this and another round, we will get through we'll probably have, I'm guessing about 30 policies for the remainder of the year to go through.
That'll
In
give us
more
time,
detail.
That'll give us.
And
time
those
to
are the
focus
deep
on
dives,
those.
right? Those are the,
It's a good way of doing it.
We're just
You
trying to
can
clean up the
focus on the right
noise.
stuff.
yeah, and if anybody would see these at a later point and want to pull one out, of course, we'll review it for actual content, but not for the waiver, so.
Very well organized.
Yeah, there's just so many to go through, so we're just trying to lump a lot of these with no changes or very little changes, just get them all through, and then we can focus on the 30
Yeah.
or so that really need to be a little.
So
more
that,
deep
and I expect that so there'll probably be another month.
Yeah.
To be honest, of these kind of no notable differences, and then you'll see us kick in. And it works in time with Christine coming, and I think that gives us time to, let's talk about these.
Yeah, we're pulling, it's some of them, even some of those no changes, we'll be like, this is one we probably review as a board, so we've been pulling some of those out kind of one by one, even if there's no changes to what we have today in ISD, is just something we probably just need to discuss.
So
more.
at least make sure it's.
You got it, yeah, they've come up in past meetings, or they've come up in conversations, and so we just say, you know what, let's just pull it out, and let's just discuss it later, as
Yeah.
opposed to just lumping it all through.
Yeah, any question at all, we set it aside, so
Nice.
that's it, yeah.
Deb, awesome job.
Oh, I think I got carpal tunnel from those. Just kidding, I didn't. I think that's all of them, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's, yeah, 13, 11, okay.
All right, next action item is consider approve the publication of the public hearing to amend this current budget for fiscal year 2021 for Monday, May 10th, 2021 at 6 p.m.
At the next board meeting, because we, as you can see, because we refinance, we have to pay all those bonds off, so we have to amend the budget that we're currently in right now. So with doing that, I went ahead and added some to each line item, so we have no surprises if we're gonna do it. We're just gonna do it, so the hearing will be at May 10th, we approve it, and that's all that's needed for the amended budget for the current year.
Move approval.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Last item here before the consent agenda is the financial report. Gail?
So overall, we have, the revenues are a little like, but our expenditures are, as you can see, there's quite a bit of green here. So, the revenues are a little lagging on the year to date, but overall our expenditures are below our target, running a little bit on, or I was gonna say, we are realizing a few more savings than in the budgetary than anticipated. So in some of those areas, you can see are the transportation, but we're seeing more in those areas and overall our year to date. So as we move through the budget year, I think this is the first quarter or end of the third quarter. A lot of our reimbursements are quarterly. So our taxes are lagging, but I'm hoping to close that gap as we get basically closer to the finish line come June 30th for our taxes and all of our revenue for federal, state reimbursements. And then we should know a little bit. Basically, tomorrow I have a webinar on ESSER 3 funds. The allocations, we've been waiting.
Yeah.
They have not released the allocations and we should be. So we have no idea what the dollar amount will be, but all that they've been saying is they're basing it exact calculation of what we've had in the past and we get minimal. So it's more, we have no idea what, but the same calculation they use. So don't worry, we have, as you can see, we have COVID expenses that we can allocate, but with this ESSER 3 funds, I do know there's 20% set aside for student achievement gap, addressing those. And then it basically for all other purposes that we've had before. So we will look, Lindsay and I have talked about that. We will, once we get the actual dollar amount for our district, our last one was just over $100,000. So I think we can expect at least 100,000, if not more than that. And then we can prioritize it and see where for reimbursement, reimbursing some of our expenses that we have had to date. Because in all funds, we've spent $301,000. So, and there are some, another area that we'll want to look at is, the nutrition fund. We still have not seen anything from the nutrition fund. So maybe take a look at that. But just all in all, we have expenses. So it's just a matter of doing a refunding the general fund for the ESSER 3. And I have put out, included in your packet, the ISB fiscal financial focus data tools. It's in your packet. And I've also updated our website to reflect, I've added our audit, I've added some fiscal facts on there. And for public transparency. And I included the, the letter that I was talking about is we had to respond to it. We have to respond to it, and it's for the nutrition fund because of the negative balance. And I explained it in my financial, and we talked about it a little bit. But other than that, we are already into the fourth quarter. So I don't know where the year has gone. I can't believe we're here approving the budget, but it's been quite a unique year.
Be a lot better now than it did a year ago.
Yeah, yeah. So we're in a lot better. When I do our financials, I'm thinking, boy, it felt really bleak at the beginning of all the unknowns. Like, wow, how are we going to budget for these? How are we going to, what's our year going to look like? But we have had lots of support and we'll just move forward. And what happens is we have to, when we get the ESSER 3 funds, we have to request reimbursement. So we have to prove our expenses, we get reimbursed, and that's how it works. We have until next September to expense those, but we'll talk about how we're gonna use those, and once we find out what they are, we should know tomorrow, so.
Great.
Thanks, Gil.
Any questions on the financial report?
Just one comment, Gail, just maybe for us to think about anyway, but I was reading kind of at the top where we talk about the current model reflects zero enrollment growth and 1.5% of expenditures. And I think the 1.5% of expenditures, when we talk about the biggest cost we have in our budget, which is salaries and benefits, which is roughly 78% of our budget. But for the remaining part outside of that, given what we're talking about with building costs and all of those things, I'm wondering if that 1.5% is going to be enough for the remaining 32%. So you might just get thinking about maybe we need to bump that to 3%, not knowing exactly where it's going to come. But I just think we're probably going to see higher costs outside of salaries and benefits, and even maybe in salaries and benefits a year from now, we're 1.5% and then do it. But anyway, I wanted to just plant that seed, Gail.
So our model for going forward is increase from our expenditures to more realistic to compensate for the inflation. And
Right, and you can talk to Travis about it, but I'm just thinking 1.5% probably.
realistic.
Just kind of thinking forward of, hey, if we're gonna be wrong, maybe that 3% is a better number than 1.5, at least. We won't be surprised as much.
Right, and so what we usually do is we have that, we try to, that sweet spot, what can we afford?
Right.
Is kind of how we build in our expenditures, our increases in our expenditures. So if, depending on a lot of that is to do where we end this current year, where we end up. So we kind of work backwards of how do we stay without dipping into our reserves, because you don't want to do that very often. So yeah, we'll work at,
Well, as long as you're not seeing it, if you're seeing it, hey, this is what we budgeted, the overline item, your budget looks good, so I'm not saying that, but I don't want to get to that stage where, we're like, oh, crud, not only is it 3% not enough, it's something bigger than that.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thanks, Gail. On to the consent agenda. Does anything need to be pulled from that or discussed?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passed. Calendar ahead, next board meeting is May 10th. It's a regular board meeting. We'll also have that budget amendment hearing, which we just approved earlier, at 6 p.m. Graduation, as Vic has alluded to, is going to be 2 p.m. As of right now in the gym, but obviously with COVID, we just don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see. And that's all we have.
Move for adjournment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
There was going to be a special.
Session. Yeah, he'll say something.
Possibly, we may need to have a special session if negotiations, what direction negotiations goes. Okay. It's yet to be known.
Andrew, they were wondering about an announcement of going into executive session.
Oh, do I need to make an announcement, go to executive session?
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to go to executive session to discuss the